Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of 18-Minute Experts, the podcast that delves into the minds of industry leaders shaping the world of group benefits. I'm your host, Jeff Bremner, back in action after a short stint on the IR, and I'm thrilled to be with our dedicated listeners once again. Joining me today are two gentlemen who are highly regarded across the industry for their consulting expertise and their leadership at the forefront of technological innovation. Chris Gory from Orchard Benefits, and Michael Wortsman from Bridgewell Financial. But before we jump into the conversation, a quick shout out to our listeners. If you enjoy the content, please be sure to subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, or Apple Podcasts. And if you aren't on any of those platforms, you can listen to us on the web at www.peoplecorporation.com/18minexperts. And if you'd be so kind as to leave us a review, we would certainly appreciate it. Your feedback fuels our journey to deliver you the best content possible. Now grab your headphones and turn up the volume because it's time to talk tech. Chris, Michael, thanks so much for doing this.
Thank you, Jeff. Glad to be here.
Thanks, Jeff.
Chris, before we get into the real questions, I can't in good conscience start this discussion without asking how Michael and I get on the BPM hot list for 2025.
Thanks so much, Jeff. I don't know. What an embarrassing thing to be on there. I'm honored to be on there with so many other great people from the industry. I just wish they could rename the award.
I think I know the secret.
What's that?
I need to grow a beard.
Ooh. Well, I've kind of got one.
Yeah, maybe you're next then, Jeff.
It's not as scruffy as Chris.
You're closer than I am.
Trim mine.
I guess you and I, Michael, we're just gonna have to settle for the people like man's sexiest man alive or whatever it is.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah. No, but like Chris, in all sincerity, a huge congratulations to you. It really is an honor, and it's very well deserved.
I agree. Well deserved.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate that. I mean, when I look at the people who are also on that list, I'm flattered to be included with them. You know, there's some great people who I really look up to. I've had great experiences working with. So to be included on that list really is an honor.
Yeah, absolutely.
Congrats again.
Thanks.
All right. You guys ready to get to the good stuff?
Let's do it.
Giddy up.
All right. Michael, for as long as I've known you, which, let's be honest, is long enough to have seen some changes in the industry, you've always been fascinated by technology and the role it could play in your business. The group benefits space isn't exactly known for being cutting edge when it comes to tech. It's traditionally been a relationship-driven, paper-heavy industry. Can you tell our listeners about your journey in group insurance and what led you to embrace technology as part of your business strategy?
Yeah, sure, Jeff. So it starts kind of analog if I go all the way back. But I've always been interested in technology from a super early age. I can even remember kind of back in public school being invited to the principal's office to use his computer at recess. It was a VIC-20. I don't know if people remember that one. It's a precursor to the Commodore 64. And I had my first opportunity to play Frogger. It was a memorable moment for me. And I always loved using computers and tinkering around and toying around with them. So yeah, certainly something that came to me very early on. And then when I kind of got into my university years, I was doing a fine arts degree at Concordia in Montreal. And by my fourth year in university, I was moved to kind of all digital. So I was doing video and photo and multimedia projects. That led me to spending about 5 years doing different kind of media production work in the art industry up in Montreal. And like so many of us in this industry, we come about it in a funny way, and we don't really expect to be where we are until we find ourselves where we are, right? And so after a handful of years trying and failing at other things, I ended up in the insurance world working with family. My father asked me to come spend some time with him at a firm that he was at. And that's when I kind of really started to draw from my technology background. But yeah, that's sort of the early days of my technology and sort of how I was fascinated from such an early time.
Hey, Jeff, I just have to add one thing. Michael, the VIC-20 reference was fantastic because I had one on a little pull-out table in our dining room growing up.
So
and
cool.
I learned to actually program Space Invaders on there. So that's fantastic.
Yeah, the programming language I remember using was called Logo. And you would like move this little triangle around the screen and tell it where to go, and it would draw lines all over the place. So, yep, we remember those things fondly for sure.
I never had any experience with the VIC-20, but I did spend a lot of time playing the Commodore 64. I didn't have one, but a friend of mine had one, and that was a blast. I think my earliest recollection of technology would have been in television. Do you remember playing in television?
Yeah, so my parents felt like getting me a computer was better than a gaming system.
Yeah.
And in their mind, they were doing me a favor. And actually, you know, in retrospect, they did me a favor by not just like setting it up with games, because I love programming and sort of figuring out how the operating systems worked and all that kind of stuff. So it probably was a good idea from their perspective.
Very, very cool. Chris, how about yourself? What led you into the group insurance industry and to sort of, you know, embrace technology as part of what it is that you do on a day-to-day basis?
Well, the tech side is because of my dad. My dad started selling, I mean, if you remember those big, massive computers, mainframe systems that took up an entire wall of an office, my dad started selling this back in the 1970s for a company called Wang Computers, long gone. And like Michael's family, they got us a VIC-20, learned to program. And I remember in high school, kind of being pushed, gently nudged towards a computer programming class. And if you remember those punch cards where you had to color in the, you know, with a pencil on the code. And I was the idiot who forgot to number them and then dropped them on the hall floor on my way to class one day and couldn't get them back in the right order and got an F and realized I stink as a coder. But that I remember countless weekends in my dad's office. But after I got my degree in geography, I started working for the Globe and Mail and integrating circulation systems. They just bought a new newspaper, and I loved working on computers, I realized. So I then went to college after that and did another 4 years post-secondary, racked up a ton more student debt. And by the time I graduated, I had met someone, and her family had a P&C firm, and they put me in contact with the largest software provider on the P&C side, a company called Applied Systems. So I started working for them for a couple of years, went over to my now ex-wife's P&C brokerage, and I was there for a couple of years. And we were approached by Zurich. Zurich had bought a program from the Kinder brothers in Texas where they would bring an established life person in to come and work your existing P&C book. And we brought in 4 people, and I was overseeing them. And as they left, I just thought, okay, they've done a lot of work selling ahead of household products. I'm going to get into group. And that was about 20 years ago.
Unbelievable. It's amazing how, you know, I think when you're young and where you envision yourself being in the future doesn't always end up the reality, right? And I think I've yet to come across very many people in the industry that sort of grew up wanting to be in insurance, or, you know, and so here's a couple of great stories of how you sort of arrived at this occupation.
Yeah, you know what, Jeff? I still put my BFA beside my name and my signature because most people don't even know what it stands for, which is Bachelor of Fine Arts, right? So you really don't know where people's origins are in this industry for sure.
And no one wants to get into insurance. You know, no high school guidance counselors push you into this industry. You know, we don't have if you look at how we're portrayed in movies, you know, the Ned Ryersons in Groundhog Day are typical, you know, Fight Club and not a great stigma, but it's a fantastic industry to be in.
It's a great industry.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's only taken me 25 years to come to that conclusion, but yes, I will agree.
No way. You wouldn't have stayed in this business for 25 years if it took you that long to come to this conclusion.
Not at all. No, 100%.
No, it is a great business. So when you look at, you know, the success that the two of you have had in this industry, do you think at all that embracing technology sort of early on in your career gave you any sort of competitive edge?
I'd say yes. You know, one of the things I did was when I first got into benefits, I was coming at it from a different perspective. My ex-wife was involved with the Canadian Franchise Association, and I wasn't getting any traction. And then I started hearing about a blossoming tech scene in Toronto, and I started reaching out to these tech companies 2006. And, you know, fast forward, I've got 120 tech companies as clients. And I find you've got to be able to walk the walk. So you have to, when you go in there to see these clients, you have to have a great tech stack behind you.
Right.
You can't just go in and say, oh yeah, I work with tech companies and not be on the bleeding edge of technology.
I would say that I also had an opportunity to kind of see a gap in what was happening when I entered into the industry from a technology standpoint. When it came to the kind of back office piece, I was, kind of baffled that reports were being created with virtually just word processors and, Excel files, and everything was manually kind of updated and transferred from one file to another. And so in those days, I was sort of figuring out how to create links and automations between Excel files and Word documents, and being able to kind of template those reports so they could be reproduced fairly quickly and easily. And that was sort of my opportunity to start creating value for partners, advisors that I worked with. Those were my early opportunities to kind of understand the group insurance world and have, meetings with clients that I would have probably not had an opportunity to do on my own. So partnering with other advisors was really my original kind of way of wiggling my way into these relationships, because I was able to kind of leverage the back office admin piece for them using technology in a way that they hadn't seen it before. They were just kind of blown away. Oh my gosh, you could do that? You can get a report produced, in less than a half a day kind of thing. These things would have taken them days and days to produce in the early days.
Well, that makes sense. I mean, it's almost like, if you're going to partner with other advisors, you have to create those tools or develop those tools to ensure that you can be efficient in your business, right? Because not only do you have all of the work that you're doing, but you're also sort of supporting the back office of other advisors.
Absolutely. Yeah. The volume increased pretty quickly because I started to build relationships with more than just 1 and 2 advisors. But before I knew it, I had, half a dozen advisors that I was partnering with fairly quickly.
Just to kind of piggyback off that, I think that's really key because, I remember back in the day, you see all, the P&C especially, they come into their client's office with these massive file folders. And, when you can sit there and call up everything instantaneously and call up the most recent renewal and most recent, what their premiums are, what their claims experience is like right in front of them. That to me was a winning edge that 15 years ago, no one had.
Absolutely.
It's a way of standing out. And it didn't take a huge investment to do that, just a commitment to do it on an ongoing basis.
Very cool. Like, looking back sort of, 15 years ago. And then I think as part of, our ongoing discussion today, we'll start looking at, technology in sort of its current state, as well as, maybe some expectations for the future as well. So really looking forward to getting into some of the questions that we've got in store for both of you today. Chris, you alluded to it, a few minutes ago when you were talking about, if I'm going to work with tech companies, I've got to understand what it is that they do. I've got to work on, similar platforms, similar systems, speak the same language. I know you take a lot of pride in staying current on all things tech. You're someone who's constantly learning, whether it's reading articles. You mentioned subscribing to, AI newsletters, listening to podcasts, attending webinars, like anything to stay ahead of the curve. So with all that insight, what do you see as the most significant technology trends shaping the group insurance industry today? Are there any innovations that you think could really, really transform the way advisors and clients interact with benefits?
I'd be a fool not to say AI, just there's just so much going on with AI, and it's changing every day. And it's just going to streamline the way we work. We're not going to see the advisor replaced. We're just going to see AI augment how we do our work. And the big challenge for an advisor is cutting through the noise, cutting through all the AI newsletters, like you mentioned, Jeff. And, there's so many things out there. About 6 months ago, I subscribed to probably 7 or 8 AI newsletters. And I tried reading them every day, Jeff, and there was just so much garbage in there. I actually found a couple of really good AI Instagram accounts that I subscribe to that I love, which I find more takeaways, talking about presentations, talking about what you can do with spreadsheets, talking about all these other things you can do. I find it, if you find the really good ones on Instagram, there's about 2 or 3 of them, you'll get probably a gem a day or a gem every 2 days that you can use and work.
Well, it's much more curated, right?
Yeah.
Rather than having to sift through a whole bunch of information, find a couple of Instagram accounts or TikTok accounts that you find valuable and spend your time on there.
And I don't know if I'm undiagnosed, but I'm much more of a visual guy than a text-based guy. So when I can actually see it on Instagram and how it's being used, it speaks to me. I can think of applications instantaneously for it.
Yeah, I mean, I think also when you're a fan of technology, you also like to try lots of different things and play around with something. And you probably do that 100 times before you find something great. You know, my experience was I had those newsletters set up, like Product Hunt was one where every week, or even maybe more than once a week, you'd get a newsletter with sort of the newest SaaS or software as a solution or software as a service kind of programs that were always coming out quickly every week. And Chris, you know about this because you kind of live in that startup world in Toronto. But I love trying them, seeing which ones I couldn't get and didn't really work for me. And then every once in a while, something great would come along. But I also think that we've gone through this wave of new tools and digital solutions. And there's been so much that got thrown at us through COVID and kind of just post-COVID that we've also kind of gotten burnt out from some of the digital solutions. And maybe we want to have a balanced approach to, personalizing and humanizing how we interact with our clients and not losing sight of that as well. But yeah, I would agree with Chris for sure that AI is got to be the number one topic right now. And everyone's kind of looking at how we can use those tools in our business.
And there you have it, folks. Another episode of 18-Minute Experts in the books. If you enjoyed today's conversation, be sure to subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or YouTube to receive notifications for future episodes. Remember, when it comes to navigating the complexities of group benefits, knowledge is power. Stay curious, stay informed, and stay empowered. Come back next time when we continue the conversation on all things technology and group insurance with Michael and Chris.